are born into a world that hands us a script. Most live out their role without question. Some are called to write their own story. And for those who align within, they find their purpose is their power. Hi, my name is Chris Barano, and I'm the founder of the Purpose Power podcast, where we share real stories of business success and struggles. Today, I'm in Boston with Chris Joy, founder of RoesselJoy. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your time very much and your willingness to share your experience and journey and learnings about building your business.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to try to get to know like where you came from, what your background and pathway has been in life. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in rural New Hampshire by Lake Winnipesaukee. It was a great childhood. It was very outdoorsy, which is different than the Boston life I live today. But yeah, I grew up in rural New Hampshire.
No concrete jungle up there, I guess.
Not at all. No, mostly trees.
Cool. Earlier, before we started today, you were telling me about some episodes in your childhood that prompted you to focus on your future and your college and all that. You want to recount some of that you shared with me?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up, like I said, rural New Hampshire, working class parents. My dad painted houses and my mom was a school administrator. No one in our family had really gone to college or pursued higher education. And so I had a lot of formative conversations with my family in like the 7th and 8th grade time period where my dad sat me down and kind of laid out what it meant to go into debt because we didn't have the resources to support, tuition.
Right.
So from a very early age, it was kind of instilled in me the meaning of money and where you can go with it. My dad really tried to convince me not to go to college. He walked me through, being in a trade for 4 years versus going into debt for 4 years. And, you 4 years after high school, you could have made $80,000 a year versus graduating 4 years later and being in debt $250,000. And so
right.
That was a really important conversation and kind of what led me to start my journey towards kind of that self-sufficiency and what ultimately led me to the business world. Spent a lot of time Googling how to get scholarships and kind of really tried to do everything that the internet said in terms of being, captain of 3 varsity sports team, president of my class, 4.0 GPA. I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that I could go to college where, no one in my family had really done so, except for my older sister. And so was able to kind of do all of those things and get a full ride to college, which is kind of
what college?
University of Vermont. Yeah.
Cool. So, what was that experience like up there? You think Vermont is this idyllic rural landscape, mountains and all that greenery. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but in my brain, it's like this beautiful spot. Was it like where you went to college?
God, Burlington is unbelievable. For anyone who hasn't been, I highly recommend it. I went from a big lake to an even bigger lake, but the city kid in me was always yearning to move down here. But yeah, it was idyllic. It was very, University of Vermont was a very, crunchy granola experience for me, which is not really my personality, but it kind of opened up that world to me. I did a lot more outdoorsy stuff than I would have done at other schools. And I met a lot of more open-minded people with a lot of different perspectives that I don't think I would have seen from a more urban environment.
Right on. Did you, in the process of choosing Vermont, did you look at Harvard or any of these other? Was that a consideration?
If I could turn back time, I'd say that was a regret of mine, is to not apply to a reach school. Again, growing up with not a lot of financial resources, I had a great childhood, but we didn't, have a lot of financial resources. And it never crossed my mind that someone in my shoes would be ever able to go to one of those schools.
Yeah.
So I actually only ever applied to state schools, and I do wonder if I would have ever gotten into one of those reach schools. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
That's an interesting thing. We think like it never occurred to you that somebody like you could go to a Harvard or Yale or one of these elite schools. That's something that I, in my own life, have dealt with as far as making assumptions about what our limitations are.
Sure.
I think a lot of us, a lot of people out in the world have assumptions about where their limits are in life. And it's kind of this baked in thing. I know it was for me for a while. And, I did some work and realize that any of us, anybody watching this, anybody in this room, anybody that works in your office has unlimited potential, and it starts with inner belief.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons I started this venture, Purpose Power, is to shed some light on what is the process to grow, whether it's personally, professionally, financially, et cetera. So I appreciate you sharing that for real. Did you have like a job, or did you have any kind of side hustle or anything in college, or just out?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked my whole life. I started working for my dad, painting houses before it was legal in my 10, 11, 12 years old. Didn't do too great with that. It wasn't my forte, but I started there. And then once I turned 14 and I could legally work in New Hampshire, I got my first job as a dishwasher and trash boy, I guess, for lack of a better term, at a outdoor restaurant on the lake. 13 trash cans. You run around. By the time you're done cleaning up all that, the dishes were full. So then you do the dishes, and by the time you're done with that, you're back at it. So I had some roles that I think, I'm looking back, I'm extremely grateful to have had, because it really instilled a drive in me to build something for myself, so I wouldn't have to be doing that for the rest of my life, because it's exhausting.
Absolutely. This is interesting, and we didn't talk about this in our pre-interview, but I started working illegally when I was 13 years old. I'd wash dishes in an Italian restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. And I did that. I worked in a Chinese restaurant, and I learned the ropes and how restaurants work and washing dishes. I was a cook too before I was even legal to work. And then also I had a house painting business while I was in college.
Okay.
Called the Paint Doctor.
There you go.
Yeah. So we have not only similar names, but similar backgrounds. So.
Yeah, I think everybody should have to work in the restaurant industry for at least a year. Waiting tables specifically for me was really formative, because it taught me like the value of service. And for me, I feel like that was probably the first segue into a professional career in sales, because, when you're waiting tables, you're serving your clients and you're making effectively commission off of that in the form of tips.
And you're providing an experience for the diner. It makes all the difference. When did you, so out of college, did you have a vision to get into staffing? What was the path there?
Yeah, it's kind of a joke in our industry that nobody goes to college to be in staffing. In fact, I didn't even know what it was. I actually moved to Boston and started selling real estate. I got my real estate license when I was 19 or 20. Moved to the city in between junior year and senior year of college and started selling real estate, and I was crushing it. I almost actually, frankly, didn't come back to finish my senior year because I had made more money than my parents in 3 months than they do in a year. And I'm glad I went back, but I kind of fell into staffing. When I moved back into the city after graduating college, I had been exhausted by the real estate game in terms of moving to a new city and wanting to meet friends, but in real estate, you're working 12 hours Saturday, 12 hours Sunday, and then, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. every night. So it was very hard for a new young person in Boston to establish a social life when everyone else is working when you're not, and vice versa. And so I kind of put my resume on a career board, a job board, and a staffing professional called me from Robert Half asking if I could be a temp for a legal firm. And I said no, but they said, "What are you looking for?" And I just kind of described what I liked and what motivated me, which was a team environment, uncapped earnings potential, where you get out what you put in, very competitive, landscape. Those are the things that attracted me. And they said, "Well, why don't you, come in and interview with us?" And that's kind of how I found my way into staffing. I had never heard of it before.
Wow. So that was a temp at a legal firm, I guess, but you were placed by, was it Robert Half that placed you?
Yeah, so they called me to try to place me, and I told them I wasn't interested in being a temp at a law firm. And so then they said, well, why don't you come in and meet the team? And then in those meetings, I started to realize what staffing was, what recruiting firms did, and how they operated. And it was very interesting to me because it combined a lot of my passions
Right on.
of helping people, but also having uncapped earning potential and a career ahead of me that I could kind of drive myself.
Very good. So how long, like what was the trajectory at Robert Half? What do they do?
Yeah, so they're a Fortune 500 company. They're the world's largest finance and accounting staffing firm. They operate, across the globe, over 20,000 employees, and they help get people jobs. They do it across all verticals now, but their bread and butter and their foundation was accounting and finance, and that's the division that I joined. And so that's where I started my career and kind of what led me to the seat I'm in today.
Cool. How long were you there?
I was only there for about 3.5 years, but I had a pretty big go in that tenure. I kind of did exactly what they told me to do, and I said if they told me to do X metric, I times that by 2.5, and I just said I'm just going to do more. And so I had a really, really successful career at Robert Half that I'm very grateful for. By my third year, I was an assistant vice president managing a large book of business across New England. And I was the number one producer on the Eastern Seaboard of about 2,000 people.
Cool. So from Robert Half, did you move into founding RoesselJoy? Was that the next step?
It wasn't a linear story like most folks aren't. I had what they call in our business, very quickly, I had what would they call golden handcuffs, where I was at Robert Half and I was making a significant amount of money for a 24, 25-year-old, well into the six figures. And I realized if I get accustomed to this lifestyle, I'm never going to be able to leave my employer because, you can't start over if you have a couple mortgages or anything like that. And so I actually decided to leave the industry completely, and I went and worked for Wayfair. And I did sales for Wayfair for a little bit, and I learned that the grass isn't always greener. And so that transition is kind of what opened my eyes to the idea of starting my own firm. I wasn't ready yet. And so instead, I went and opened the Boston office for another staffing firm. And that gave me the experience of what it's like to open into a new market, to reach out to clients who might not have heard of the company before, which is really what was the ultimate influential moment that led me to start my own company.
So you just said I wasn't ready yet. What does that mean? And so for anybody that's watching this that considers that maybe sees themselves, being a founder or a business owner, what does it mean to be ready?
Oh, that's a good question. At the time when I say I wasn't ready, I would have been able to do it. If I look back, I probably would have started it a year earlier. Robert Half and these big companies, they do really push you to drink the Kool-Aid, which I had done. And for a long time, I thought that the only reason I had any business success was because of the company's logo on the wall, not because of the way I was treating my clients and candidates. And so having an opportunity to leave the industry and then get back in, if I would have never left Robert Half for another staffing firm, I just wouldn't have done it. And so having the opportunity to leave the industry and come back in really opened my eyes to the fact that my clients weren't working with me because of the brand name on the wall. They were working with me because they wanted to work with me. And so I would say, if anything, I wish I didn't feel ready, but I probably was, and I could have done it sooner.
So you founded RoesselJoy with a man named Roessel.
Yes.
How did you guys form the partnership, and what was the initial vision to open up?
Yeah, Jonas Russell, we were both at Robert Half at the same company, but we didn't really know each other. We were in different divisions and different offices. And so when I had opened the Boston office for the other staffing firm, about a year in, I really realized that I wanted to start doing this on my own. But I didn't want to do it alone. And that was really important to me because I know myself and I know the difference of an accountability partner and what that'll do for me in my productive capacity. And so I had actually reached out to a lot of people in my network who I wanted to start the company with. And a lot of them had kids or a mortgage or, had some other factors that, made them a little bit more risk averse than me. And Jonas had messaged me on LinkedIn, and so we actually met at a Starbucks for the first time about 3 months before we started the company, and just started. He had mentioned wanting to start a firm in a year or two. I had told him I was actually looking to do it ASAP, and so the two of us kind of took a leap of faith. Honestly, we didn't really know each other all that well.
But you have a good I've
Yeah,
met both of you, and it seems like just from the outside, like the two of you have very different type of energy, different
yeah.
personalities, and I can see how it's a really good team because he probably can handle things in an effective way, and you can handle things in an effective way. Those things might be different.
Yeah, I would say that we're almost opposites. We're both very strong in our careers and our profession. We're very good at what we do. Jonas is more of, I would say, a visionary dreamer, and I'm more of a conservative pragmatist. And so it is a good yin and yang where, I think if I started my company alone, we wouldn't be in a 15,000 square foot office. We'd be in a 2,000 square foot office. And if he started his company alone, I think he'd tell you he probably would have burned all of his cash too quickly and expanded too fast. So we're a good, he pulls and I pull back, and we ground each other in that way. And so far it's worked out in a really effective way.
Do you want to share what it was like the first day or two, when you all said, "We're gonna do this,"
hmm
and you probably had to make some plans, think about where the office was going to be, who your first hires were, etc. Can you share any insight on what that was like?
Yeah, it was terrifying. We were both making very, very good livings at a young age. And I think, frankly, everybody in my family, my friends, his friends were saying we're crazy. Like, why would you do this? We had a very comfortable life, very comfortable jobs, really good career trajectories in those companies. And so it was a very scary thing to think about doing, but we had a lot of conviction. And like I said before, I was 27, he was 26. We didn't have a mortgage. We didn't have kids. We had what it always came back to was the reality, which is I can always just go back. If I take a leap of faith and it fails, I don't have a house to lose. I don't have a car to lose. I don't have kids that I have to take care of. And so it was an opportune moment to really take that leap of faith, but it was a very scary time. But that fear is, I think, what motivated us to excel very quickly.
Um, you told me once a story about the day. Do you want to share that here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Our launch of the business was a little bit premature. So we had met in January. We had made the decision to start the company, and the first thing we did was sign a lease. And so our plan was to start the company on April 18th. That's when the lease commencement date was. And so we thought we had about 3 months to build a website, get some business cards, put our contracts in place, get our house in order to launch. We wanted to launch in a really formal way. We don't do anything by accident. We don't do anything at 50%. That didn't go as planned. It was about 2 months before April 18th when Jonas's former boss was at a networking event, and the real estate agent who signed our lease went up to the boss and said, "Congratulations on your expansion." And the boss said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I just signed this lease with your employee, Jonas." So I'm, at my office 2 months before when we were supposed to launch, and I get a call from Jonas saying that he was just let go because his boss pulled him in and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm starting my own company." Um, so that was unanticipated. And so Jonas called me and said, "Chris, I'm picking you up from work. We're going to a client meeting this afternoon." He already had on the books, and you need to quit right now. And so that was very scary. I had to walk into my boss's office, and it was not professional. I don't recommend anybody do this,
Right.
but I had to tell him not only is today my last day, but I have to leave right now. And so I walked out, got in Jonas's car. We drove to a Microsoft store, got some tablets, went to a bar actually to get Wi-Fi to download the Office suite, and then we went to our first client meeting, which was also not as we had anticipated. It went well. The woman was a contact of Jonas's who had done business with Jonas, and we kind of sat down and said, "Hey, we're no longer with, X, Y, and Z companies. We've started our own firm." And She said, no problem. She said, just send me your contract, send me your business card, give me your website, and we'll start working together. And we had to sit there and say, well, we don't have business cards, we don't have a contract, and we don't have a website. And so she was uh, very grateful for this. She was lucky, we were lucky enough that she gave us the business, and she said, here's our contract. If you want to sign that, you can start working on this role for us. And we actually had filled the role by the next Friday. And we have a check framed in our office, that check
Wow.
in one of the rooms here, which was our first check, which we got on our, I think, day 7 in business. So it was a very exciting time.
Was there, so you started this, as you say, prematurely, but like the way that I see it, like the universe, the flow of life opened the door for you, and you had to walk through it.
Yes.
So sometimes when we start things like that, it gives us maybe a little extra edge or energy or aggressiveness that so we can make sure it succeeds. So very cool.
Yeah.
Were there early in the early days, were there moments where you ever considered, like, maybe this wasn't a good idea, maybe we've bitten off more than we can chew, we don't have as many clients as we want,
Yeah.
etc. Was it rocky at first, or?
Yeah, I think as a business owner, one of the things they don't tell you is that that feeling will never fully go away. I wake up every day thinking, do we have enough clients, or are we going to make it? And so there's always, I would say, a level of healthy anxiety that drives entrepreneurs to move forward. And there were a few formative times. Obviously, COVID was a very difficult time. We lost 65% of our business in 24 hours. And that was a very, very difficult time. And I was certainly wondering then, but everyone was going through that. And so, that I would say that thought of, are we going to make it, or are we going to do well enough, or should I have stayed in my old job? I'm not sure, whether we have 2 employees or the 50 we have now or 500 in the future. I'll probably always have some level of that fear.
What is the culture here like with your recruiters? What kind of environment do you try to create for your staff that helps deliver a better product to your clients?
Yeah, culture is an extremely, if not the most important part, I think, of what's led to our success in our business. We have a few pillars that we kind of stand by, passion, performance, pride, and possibility. When we have our first day training with our team, we tell them that these pillars are the core values of our enterprise. Passion, we need to be more passionate than anybody else about staffing. And if you're not interested in that, we're not the right fit. Pride, we need to be really proud of the candidates we represent and proud of the clients that we represent. We meet every candidate that we represent face-to-face. We meet every client that we represent face-to-face, and we take a lot of pride. I don't care if they're, a company that, services porta potties to concerts, or if they're Boston Children's Hospital or Dana-Farber Cancer Research. We're very proud of the work that our clients are doing, and we're very proud of the caliber of the candidates that we represent. And then, performance, we are dedicated and committed to outperforming everyone in our business. And we do that by subject matter expertise and being obsessive with the roles we fill, and going really deep in our knowledge of each position that we recruit for. And then possibility, we firmly believe that, possibility for our clients and candidates, candidates typically get 10 to 15% raises when they are represented by us to be placed at another competitor or another organization. Possibilities endless for the team here. We have an uncapped earnings environment. We're a commission-based organization. And so what we want are people who are here for excellence, to take pride in their work, don't cut corners, we're not lazy, and we hold a really high standard for our internal team. With that, it creates a really tight-knit culture because everybody's rowing in the same direction. And we're very upfront in the recruiting process if someone wants to work here, that we're not a 9 to 5, we're not a lifestyle place. We're here to grow, be the largest and best we can as quickly as we can. So, people, I don't love the term work hard, play hard, but it does fit here. Yeah. And that's kind of, how we operate.
have you had feedback from clients saying like, wow, you guys operate on a different level or a different vibe, different energy? Do you get that kind of feedback from clients?
Every single week. Yeah. It's when I talk about pride, that's probably one of the proudest things that, one of the things I'm most proud of, rather. Uh, Part of that is our training. We go in extremely technically deep into the subject of the roles we fill. So, if we're recruiting for a senior accountant for a publicly traded SaaS company, we're going to understand whether or not they're doing SEC reporting, if they're owning Qs and Ks, or if they're more on the revenue team doing ASC 606 or 782, or if it's GAAP or IFRS environment. We go really, really deep in that way, and our competition simply doesn't. They say a senior accountant is a senior accountant, which is just not true. And so our number one testimonial we get, and I get it every week, not me, but people reach out to our firm on behalf of some of my team members, saying that it was such a refreshing experience when they asked us to do a search, because they interviewed 5 candidates through us. All 5 had the technical capability to do the job, and it was just a matter of them choosing the best culture fit for their organization. Our industry has a pretty bad reputation of not going really technically deep in the subject matter of the roles that they fill, and that can lead to wasting a lot of clients' times and setting up interviews that really shouldn't have been set up because the candidate doesn't have what they're looking for.
Is there an element of you having to kind of manage your clients or educate your clients on, so if a client comes and says we need a XYZ position, I'm sure that there's some sort of information exchange that might need to be managed. Do you I know, so some clients might be really good clients to work with, and
Sure.
there's probably other clients that maybe need some help.
Yeah.
Is there any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see it every day. The best clients to work with are the ones who trust us and trust the professionals. All we do every day is give people jobs. It's 100% of my job. And so, the more difficult clients are the ones who think that talent is like going to a farm stand and picking an apple, and they're just, on a tree and they can just have whatever they want. If a client comes to me and says they need someone with XYZ skill set with a very specific software expertise and a very specific certification, they're pigeonholing themselves in a search, and that's going to only allow them to see a certain level of candidate. The better clients to work with are the ones who understand the market. They understand that it's a candidate-driven market currently. There are more job openings than there are employees. And so what they really should be hiring for is foundational skill set, but also aptitude and attitude. Because for me, what I always advise my clients for is, if you have some capacity to train on maybe 1 or 2 technical pieces they don't have, hire the person with the right passion, energy, drive, motivation, and then train them on a few of those technical components, as opposed to, pigeonholing yourself to like maybe 3 candidates just because they check off every little box from a technical perspective.
Have you ever had an experience where you saw something in a candidate that maybe wasn't written in a resume, something that was kind of a what do you call it, a je ne sais quoi?
Sure. Yeah.
That you've had to either coach the candidate or persuade your client? Did these situations come up?
They do. They happen all the time. I mean, the most recent example I can think of is a client who was searching for a CFO, chief financial officer, for their organization, and they really wanted someone who had been a CFO before. They didn't want a rising, maybe controller, finance VP. And then I had a candidate who was, in that mold, who had never been a CFO, but was the most senior level accounting hire of their organization, reporting to the CEO, but their title was corporate controller. And it was kind of pulling strings on both sides. I had to convince the candidate that he had what it takes to be the CFO of the organization. And then I had to convince the client to interview him, even though he had never been a CFO. After interviewing about 40 or 50 people, they interviewed him and they hired him. And he's now the CFO of the organization. And we still do business with them on other roles. But I think that's one of the biggest advantages of partnering with an agency, is when you work with the professional, they might see things that other people don't, and can identify that and connect those dots.
I can just imagine that that's got to be a really powerful feeling, knowing that you helped elevate this and you helped somebody else understand that there's more to than just the title. And, people have these the word I was looking for, je ne sais quoi, was intangible.
Sure.
That's very cool. Do you get a lot of satisfaction out of that?
Yeah, but I would say the short answer is yes, but it does carry some weight. And one of the things we also do in our trainings with our new hires is we do remind them, you are going to become desensitized to what we do very quickly because it's all we do. I'm giving offers out to candidates every day.
Right.
And it's really important to remember that outside of getting married, having a kid, or maybe purchasing a house, the decisions that are being made in these walls are the most important decisions for our candidates and clients' lives. Your career is one of the most important things in your life. And so there's a lot of weight to that. And it's important to remember that and take that into every conversation we have, because it can be very easy to forget it and become desensitized. And you're talking to a candidate, convincing them to take an offer that maybe isn't the right fit, just because you want to book a deal, which is why our industry can have a bad rep. But we really try and live that. We try and remind our team of that weight every day, of the importance of what we do, because it is really critical for the people we represent.
So you would say one of your values is to not book a deal just because it's maybe the client is ready to sign the deal. Maybe you want to make sure the fit is solid.
That was one of the biggest frustrations I had working for the Fortune 500. I think that being publicly traded and being a staffing firm are antithetical in some ways, because you're, in a publicly traded environment like I was, you have to hit your monthly revenue goals, right? You have, shareholder responsibility. You need to be generating profit for the shareholders. That's your number one job as a publicly traded business. And so that was a frustration, because you did feel oftentimes pressured if it was the end of the month to try and force a candidate to take a job that isn't the right fit. One of the things that we do very differently at RoesselJoy is we really do, and it might sound cliche, but we put the candidates first and we put the clients first, and it makes a difference.
As I mentioned earlier, my mother worked for Procter & Gamble for 25 years, and she would share these stories with me about surveys that they would do with their employees. And, I was 15, 16 years old when she said, yeah, Chris, not everybody is motivated by money. We have, 150,000 employees or whatever the number was. And we do these surveys, and people are motivated by other things in business and their careers. Do you see that reflected in your candidates also? Do you all do any sort of survey of candidates to find out what's most important to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very hot topic right now, especially as the world navigates the post-COVID landscape. Specifically, what comes to mind is, hybrid versus in-office versus remote work. I think that COVID did a lot to magnify the non-compensation aspects of a career. And a lot of people have shifted their mindset to not necessarily focus so much on the dollar, but, am I commuting 2 hours a day? And what does that mean? And if I'm not, what does that allow me to do? Does it open up time for me to put my kids to bed at night, or, get them ready in the morning? And what can you really put a dollar value on that?
Yeah.
And so we are seeing a more dynamic set of requirements from our candidates, which I think is important. I think it's about time. But yeah, I would say that money, while obviously is important in everyone's career, is only one piece of the puzzle. Work-life balance, commute, career trajectory, how you're treated or valued in your workplace. All of those things are really important considerations.
And I think, as you noted, this is accelerated after COVID. And you've been in this industry for a while. You've seen those trends change, I guess. You mentioned earlier about we're not a lifestyle, RoesselJoy is not a lifestyle. You see these videos on TikTok or Instagram, these people going to their jobs, and first I'm going to stop at the espresso bar in the lobby, and then I'm going to go to a yoga session before I go to my desk.
Yeah, no, we're not that. So, we certainly recruit for a lot of clients that are, and I would say
you see some of that out in the world.
Absolutely. But I would say, as much as I just said that money is not the most important thing, typically for staffing professionals, that is the leading motivator. So we are a pretty money motivated group of individuals, but the only way we can make money is by doing right by our clients and candidates.
Yeah, right on. Simon Sinek. says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do what you do. Why do you do what you do, Chris Joy?
That's a good question. I am building, hopefully, a legacy. We're trying to build something here a little bit greater than ourselves, and that's always been the goal. We are looking to be the industry leader, not just here in Boston, but across the country. And why that's important to me is because I do feel that for a very long time, the staffing industry has been very black and white. And there's a lot of bad reputations out there in terms of, as I said before, people cutting corners or trying to make a quick buck. What we're doing here is putting our candidates first, putting our clients first, and putting our team first. And when you do that and you give your team the right tools and better technology, better payout commission structure, and a vision, then you are, in my experience so far, going to have good results, and you're going to be able to build something that's a little bit bigger than yourself. And so we want to build a multi-generational business that's going to withstand the test of time and hopefully change the kind of the face and the expectations of what's good in our business.
If someone asked, why is RoesselJoy exist? What void do you fill in the market? What would you say?
I would say that our industry is very antiquated. We are not known to have the best technology. We're not known to be really forward thinking. And so we've really flipped the script a little bit, where we have invested 100% of the profits of our business back into infrastructure, back into technology, back into tools. We are early adopters of artificial intelligence. That's a big component of our business. And we're forward thinking. We're thinking about what's next in our business and what's next for our clients and candidates. And that's really, I think, might not sound it, but that is different than what the boilerplate staffing firm.
Yeah, just in my travels and in my personal life, I know people that are recruiters, and they're typically like, they're friends, but a lot of them are just one man bands,
Sure.
just trying to do a deal to get a check.
Yep.
I mean, is that, that's probably, some of the bad rep that staffing gets.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're solving really complex problems for our clients. We are leading multi-year global ERP implementations for the Fortune 100. We are completing a 3.5-year global SAP implementation for one of our clients in the next 2 months that we've been working on for the last 3 years with a team of 6+ consultants. We are very focused on the long-term needs of our clients, and we really focus on mission-critical project work and how we can be an asset to our clients' end goals through providing expert financial and accounting support. And so we aren't just filling a seat. We're taking on large, complex projects for our clients.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've implemented AI into the business?
Yeah, I think it's a really hot topic in our business, as any business right now. A lot of people, and when you interview some recent grads, a lot of them are asking, is my job going to be replaced? Right? We are very bullish on AI. We invest heavily in it. We have proprietary technologies that we're investing in. We have the latest versions of all of our tools. One of the technological advancements we made recently is it's pretty cool. It does a lot of automated response to our candidates and clients on behalf of our own staff. So there's a lot of automated reach out. There's a lot of automation in matching a candidate to a job spec. All of that can be done by artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, artificial intelligence, as we see it today, and of course, it's a very rapidly evolving landscape. We see it as an incredible tool to leverage to allow our recruiters to spend more time having face-to-face conversations with candidates. We want to remove all of the data entry, all of the time suck, keying things into softwares or searching for the right candidate. AI is going to be able to do all of that, but what it will never replace is the human interaction, and what it will never replace is my ability to go to a client and say, hey, you should really consider this candidate who might not hit the specs that an AI robot would say would make him qualified, such as the CFO role that I mentioned. That'll never be replaced.
I see a lot of people out in the world, AI is, doomsday. It's going to take all the jobs. The way that I see it is that AI is an opportunity, just as you said, to further double down on the human touch, face-to-face interactions. I personally see it as an opportunity. I don't share the doomsday approach. Do you have any sort of vision or crystal ball where the recruiting industry might be if AI continues to accelerate at this speed?
Yeah, I mean, it's very tough to say, but right now we're seeing it as a very positive way of being able to do more with your time. So where, 2 years ago, a recruiter is, being told to meet 15 candidates a week to bring them into the pipeline to be represented by our firm. Well, half of their day they're spending entering the resume into the database, or scheduling an interview prep, or scheduling a Zoom meeting. All of that can be done on a human's behalf by AI, which now will allow our recruiters to maybe meet 25 candidates a week, maybe 30 candidates a week. So the way we see it is it's a huge asset to our organization, our ability to meet more candidates, meet more clients, make more connections, and ultimately make more placements.
Absolutely. It gives you an opportunity to get to know the candidate better and maybe uncover some strengths or some assets that candidate has that can bring your clients. Do you all meet candidates in person, or are these done over Zoom? How does that work?
Yeah, so mostly over Teams or Zoom meetings.
Sure.
We do make sure to do we call it face-to-face meetings, whether it's in person or over video with every single candidate that we represent. I would say probably 85% are Zoom, but we do still have a very big in-office presence. My team works here 4 days a week. I work here 5 days a week. And every placement we make, because we only focus on serving our geography where we live, every single placement we make, we meet the candidate and client in person, usually for a celebratory lunch or dinner.
Nice.
But we make the point to meet everyone in person who we actually successfully place, and we don't really cut corners there.
Geography. So does RoesselJoy only serve New England, Boston area? What's your scope?
Yeah, I would say Eastern Massachusetts, Southern New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. And that's for now. We're just getting started. So while we are what I would think to be, early adapters to AI and very technologically advanced and big investors in that space, we're also, on the other side of the coin, very old school in that when we expand, we will have boots on the ground in each geographic market that we focus on. When a client calls me and says, hey, Chris, I need help finding a senior accountant, it is extremely critical to the foundation and fabric of our organization that I can say, hold on, what are you doing in 30 minutes? I'll be there. I'll be at your office. I'm coming to your office right now. I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to learn about your team. I'm going to learn about your culture so that I can make the right fit. So even in remote environments, we try to be in person as much as we can. And so when we expand, we'll follow that methodology.
The way you describe you handle clients and candidates, from my perspective, from the outside, it sounds like you guys should have the market just about wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying hard. I think that that people-centric approach has proven to work. Just looking at some of the accolades we've had, we are the fastest growing staffing firm in Massachusetts per the Boston Business Journal. They named us last year the 6th fastest growing company in the state of Massachusetts in general. And then just last month named us one of the top 150 largest employers in the state when you take into consideration all of our consultants working at all of our clients. It's something we're really proud of, but we do feel like we're just getting started. We're just working in Massachusetts right now, and we have a lot of ground to cover.
There may be expansion outside of the area in the future.
We'd like to be the largest, and most well-respected staffing firm in the United States one day.
Do you have any experience placing somebody with a company and that candidate blew the expectations out of the water? They really helped transform a company. They delivered results that made you proud of that placement.
It happens all the time. Yeah, we represent some really, really strong talent here. One of the more impactful examples I can think of, and this is going to date me a little bit, is back during the Ebola crisis. We had a local nonprofit that felt like they were best positioned to get grant funding to go tackle that crisis in Africa. And they didn't have the appropriate grants finance professionals to be able to bid to the USAID and the United States government to get the windfall of cash they need to operate and kind of put a stop to Ebola. And we were able to deploy a team of grants finance professionals who were able to put a bid in for about $20 million to the United States government, upon which they swiftly received. And then they deployed their efforts in the remotest areas in Africa where Ebola was wreaking the most havoc. And I think part of the swift, end to that crisis was because of that organization's ability to secure that financing. I'm not taking credit for it. I don't think it was us, but that's something, we do that type of work all the time.
If you could speak to your 24-year-old self and tell him the path ahead, what advice would you give him? What have you learned about your entrepreneurial journey that has most surprised you, and something that you would try to relay to your younger self?
Oh man, there's probably a lot of things I would say. I would say go for it. You'll never regret it, and you'll never look back. But I would also say that it's way harder than you think it's gonna be. You're gonna be tested in ways that you never thought you'd be tested, and you'll be pushed to the brink of mental exhaustion, and you'll face challenges you never thought you'd have to face. But I think with any successful entrepreneur, the difference oftentimes in what makes someone successful and what maybe might lead to a failure, in my opinion, is persistence, and grit and weathering storms, and not giving up when times get tough, because they certainly do. And unless you invent the next big craze, there's no get rich quick story. Success comes after days upon months upon years of hard work, persistence, and grit. So if you're willing to do that, then go for it.
Right on. In my various business ventures over the years, looking at it from the outside, things look really simple. And when you're inside it, there are so many areas that you have to address that you don't realize it looking at it from the outside. This latest venture that I'm in has tested me too in a lot of ways, particularly about dealing with people. Like, because I have contractors that I hire, and I have to kind of step outside my comfort zone to like deal with things that respect the business vision, as opposed to where my comfort zone might be in dealing with somebody, say firing somebody.
Sure.
Or, it's you don't know what you're in for until you're inside of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've hired and fired probably thousands of people now on behalf of, not just internally at RoesselJoy, but on behalf of my clients. But I would say for any entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, if you are not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And so you need to be willing to live in almost a constant state of discomfort, rather, if you want to grow both professionally and personally.
Has there been a story that that's been can you share with us a disappointment where you've placed somebody, you thought it was going to work out, your client thought it was going to work out, but it had to be aborted at some point? Is that, that probably doesn't happen. It's probably not an everyday thing, but have you had those situations, and what did you learn from?
Yeah, of course we have. At the end of the day, our product, for lack of a better term, is people. And so people can be unreliable, or, and can act in ways that you don't anticipate. So, no matter what diligence we do in vetting a professional, if they go in, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. You don't know what's happening in their personal life. Something could change. That could change the way they act at work. And so there certainly are times where things don't work out. And there have been times, not many, where clients have moved on from us. But at the end of the day, as long as we know we're doing everything we can, we're over communicating, we're acting in a transparent and honest fashion, the cards aren't always going to fall in your direction. But if you move forward with integrity and honesty and transparency with your clients, more often than not, even if things don't go the way that we had anticipated, we usually get to maintain those relationships with those clients and do better next time. That's something we're very committed to doing. If we don't make the right placement first, we'll make it the second time.
Very good. The last question. If a competitor went to one of your clients and asked them, what's it like working with RoesselJoy? What would you hope that your client would say?
I would hope that they would say that RoesselJoy understands us more than any other staffing firm they've worked for, from a cultural perspective, from a technical perspective, and from a subject matter perspective. I want my clients to feel like I understand their business. I understand what makes them tick. And that's going to allow me to make the most effective placements, to find folks who not only have the right technical skills, but also have that right culture match to what the client's looking for. And you can only do that if you're obsessed with your, people that you represent, your product, and you have a deep knowledge base of the roles that you fill.
Right on. Well, Chris, I appreciate your time today, and thank you for all of your
it's been
good
fun,
answers.
Chris. Yeah, thanks a lot.
And insights, man. So anyway, more power to you, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. All right.
Very good.
Thanks.